Welcome to the Business Spotlight Series. My name is Mark McNulty, and I'm president of Action Coach Bluegrass. And today I have with me Peter Pickett, who is the founder of Pickett Brass and Blackburn Trumpets. And today we're going to be talking about his business and his journey to business, how he went from accidental entrepreneur to business owner, and some of the challenges and best practices, and just share a peek into what it's really like to live a day in the life of a business owner. If this is your first time on the channel, be sure to like and hit the subscribe button so you get notifications when the future interviews drop. So Peter, welcome and thanks for being here today.
Hey, I appreciate it. You're welcome. Glad to be here.
All right, awesome. So Peter, tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit about Pickett Brass and Blackburn Trumpets.
Sure. So Pickett Brass, namesake for myself, of course. I started in 2003. It's like Hewlett-Packard. Started in a garage behind my house. I like to make things. I'm a musician. I come from a very musical background, and I play trumpet. And so trumpets are a bunch of mechanical little parts, and much like anything, wanted to look nice and look functional and be functional. So I manufactured some parts in my garage, and very labor intensive, slow, inefficient, but it was fun and it was an act of creation. It was great, and so when I was going to community band rehearsal, just keeping the horn on my face, my friends would say, "Hey, that looks great. Can you make me a set?" And so I would make another set, and it would be very, very labor intensive and take forever. But after a year of that, I said, maybe there's something here. And so invested in just a little bit of machinery, no space, of course, just still running in my garage, and just made those parts for 3 or 4 years. And yeah, it's like a lot of those things. It's like it's like an overburdening hobby, right? You're doing it all the time. You're not quite out of the hobby phase. You think you should do a business. So eventually we did incorporate and made it go. But that side of the business was not probably sustainable, and I think that's probably true for a lot of entrepreneurs when they start. You have a good idea, it goes somewhere, and then it just kind of loses its legs.
Okay. So then Blackburn Trumpets came along.
Yeah, and these pieces and parts were being asked for and requested, but not at the scale. And in order to move out of the garage and to invest in more machinery, there had to be something that would scale. And scaling is like the most impossible thing. Being an engineer by background, I'm a control freak and want to have control, and that is not a recipe for scale. And so around 2008, 2009, we did expand a little bit to make these pieces and parts. But again, that lost its legs, and it turned into having to find another product. And that was brass instrument mouthpieces, such as trumpet and trombone, cornet and French horn and such. And that really paved the way for growth. That is much more of a consumable product, more or less. Lots more volume, lots more opportunities. And that eventually led to being able to fund doing the entire instrument. So we go from making a mouthpiece, which is 1 or 2 parts, to making cornets and trumpets that it's 100 parts, and all those parts are made in-house, and that is a totally different business, but it was able to stand on the shoulders of the mouthpiece business, and so stumbled into scale in that regard.
Okay. So how do you spend your time today, as a founder, owner? What's a typical day for you, typical day or week for you?
Sure, that's a great question. And people come by the shop for tours or visits, and it is a chance for me to step back and go, what actually do we do here? And where am I involved? And being, like I said, a little bit of a control freak, I'm more or less curious about how things work. And I want to know how things the processes are moving, where things are getting stuck, how things are being made. And when things go out of your purview for a period of time, they make for a life of their own, which is the secret to scale, is letting go and letting other people actually take these processes and take these products and make them go. So a day in my life is I try to come in at the beginning of the day as an owner and not as an employee. I love doing stuff. I could do everything here and be happy. And that's probably my downfall, because I chase this shiny thing over here and I see a squirrel over there and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And then the day's gone. So a lot of that creativity and outlet exists for me. It's a big playground, but at the same time, that doesn't do everybody else here or the business a lot of service. And so I have to start at least in the right mindset, think about big picture. What are we trying to do here? Where are we trying to grow? And then as the day goes on, I get deeper and deeper and lower level, solving whatever issues. Trying to learn how to delegate, which I am not very good at. But every day is a good day for practice for that. So it's a balance of really detailed oriented things, and then of course strategy and high level things.
Okay. So so tell us a little bit about your industry, so is there a ton of competition there? I mean, there's not a trumpet maker on every corner, so you're not, you don't have that to deal with. But
Yes.
as a former trumpet player myself, you've got the cons, you've got the right, there's the really, really big names in the industry, and then there's lots
Yes.
of mid-tier names. So, tell us kind of, where do you fit into that, and what makes your instrument special?
Yeah, and that was a thought process we had to go through before we even stepped into the arena. It's like, where are we starting? What do you want to be, and what are the opportunities? And you're right, they're the big players like Yamaha. I mean, Yamaha is a multi-billion-dollar industry that has basically unlimited funds and resources that we can only dream of. Now, thankfully, this industry, band and orchestra, is very collegial. Everybody gets along, right? And it doesn't do any good to either badmouth or try to disgrace a competitor. Everybody has their thing. And thankfully, because of how these things are designed, there are unlimited variations. It's like buying shoes. There are unlimited shoe styles. There are unlimited colors. There are unlimited everything. And so there is room for all the Reeboks and the Nikes and the Adidas and so on and so forth. That's the same for us, maybe a couple orders of magnitude smaller, but there is plenty of room. And so we're basically smack dab in the middle. There are lots of one-person companies. There are makers who again operate out of the garage, very boutique, very successful, very low overhead, no interest in scaling to anything larger. Yeah, peace, that's great. And then of course you have the Consummers and the Box and the Yamahas at the other end with hundreds of employees. And we're right in the middle with 10 employees. And so it doesn't sound like it's huge, but that segment between 10 employees and maybe 60 or 70 employees, that's the meat of the market. And that's true across Europe with a bunch of makers, lots of small makers. And then, of course, in the US, there is, again, Consumer up in Elkhart. There's Getson, there's Shires. And unfortunately, that's about it. There was Canstel, which was 30 or 40 employees in California, but they went out of business after the death of the founder, unfortunately. And so we're right there in the middle, maybe on the bottom side of that mid.
Okay. So what is it that makes you special?
That's a great question, because these products look the same. From 10 feet away, every trumpet looks the same. And that's frankly, that's a hard challenge, because you have multiple types of customers, and a lot of them just are basically looking at face value. There's price, quality, and service, and you only get two. And so people are always looking for price. And so then they either compromise on quality or service. And so with us, you're not necessarily getting the cheapest price, but you get handcrafted, great background in terms of design with William Cardwell and Cliff Blackburn, very functional, very high performing. There's no doubt. So anybody that comes here, they make a trip, they end up buying something. There is no question. Once they walk through, they see the people, they smell the shop, they see what it takes, and they see the care that goes into it. Ultimately, that is the sale closer. Now, if you don't come to the shop, that is very difficult to convey. We can do endless social media posts and this and that, and talking. But everybody can say that. It's when you see it that it makes a huge difference. And that's one of our challenges, is to communicate that outside of the very few people, of course, that actually end up coming here.
Okay. All right, good. So how do you market the business? Obviously word of mouth, I'm sure, is within the music industry, right? Word of mouth, right? Somebody's like, yes, wow, that's a awesome looking and sounding trumpet. I'm a former trumpet player, so I've seen and heard great sounding trumpets, and I've seen and heard the cheap ones. They're different, right? Yes. They're different.
And it's different on both sides of the horn, right? So as a player, you know what it feels like to play something that just doesn't feel good, whether a mouthpiece or a horn. And on the flip side, you hear terrible sounding instruments played by great people. And so the whole thing is an instrument, you, the mouthpiece, and the horn. And when all those three things are in the right place, it's an amazing thing. And we see that in all of our heroes like Doc Severinsen. He is such a powerful mental instrument on this side that almost no matter what you put in front of him, it makes a huge, it sounds like Doc. Now, he is a lifelong learner and he is super curious. And he's been to our shop a number of times. He plays on our mouthpieces and he's always looking for that thing to complete all of this out into the instrument. And you can hear when he's uncomfortable with something. And this is true for almost any player. If it feels funny, then your body will do something different. Going back to the shoe analogy, when you put shoes on your feet that don't feel good, arch is in the wrong place, wrong size, too tight, you can still walk and you can still run, but boy, you look funny because you're trying to do things with something that's not a good fit. And so when we go to shows, part of our job is to put those shoes on you and let you walk around the room. So you get a mouthpiece, you get an instrument, you play it, you have your friend listen, and they go, it looks like you're working. I mean, what does it feel like on the other side? And there's a conversation with a very friendly environment, and you can watch the person change as people are reacting to what they're doing, and everything has to adjust. And when you get the right pair of shoes on your feet and your gait adjusts, it's amazing how comfortable you are, and you're much more relaxed. You can run further. It's easier, and there are no injuries. And that's true. That's true for mouthpieces and horns. You've got to find a fit. And then, per your point, it is a lot of word of mouth. It's a very slow business. It's difficult to market that experience and that quality that somebody feels. And when they talk about it, that has just an amazing power to convince those people that trust them. And so over several generations of players now, we have generated a huge reputation. Uh, and it looks instantaneous. It's what, overnight success in 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And that is hard to deal with. And you wish you could just tell everybody what you do and how great it is, and poof, and be in business. But this is much revolves a lot around trust. And so just because you say something, everybody says that. I don't believe you, and it's just passed off. Versus when you go to a trade show, people put it on their face and they go, "Oh, yeah, it does feel pretty good."
Okay, awesome. So, what was the trigger for? Because you were a mechanical engineer working for Lexmark. What was that trigger point that said, "Nah, I'm going to own a business"?
Oh gosh, that I guess it's like unconscious obsession or irrational unconscious obsession. I like to create, right? So music is a form of creation, but I'm very tactile. I like pieces and parts, hence the mechanical engineering. My dad was electrical and it was interesting and I could do it, but I couldn't see anything, right? Yes, you could make the light come on and you could do lots of things, but ultimately, while at Virginia Tech, I got involved into mechatronics, which is the marriage of mechanical engineering and electronics to really make stuff happen. And all that creation, all that motion stuff that you could see was really something. While at Lexmark, yes, we're making mechanical parts and machines, and so certainly that held my interest and lots of skills came about there. But at the end of the day, I wanted to play and make stuff in that industry. And so again, like you suggested at the beginning, accidental entrepreneur. So as this business developed and the mouthpieces started to take off, life calls your bluff, right? Two full-time jobs and a couple of kids, and it's like, all right, hold on. What are we doing here? You need to pick. And so, yeah, in 2014, it ended up being picking this business over Lexmark and took an early retirement. And, here we are. And that was a ridiculous risk to take. And in hindsight, everything looks like it made perfect sense. In the moment, nothing makes sense. And so I think there are a lot of people who say, with a side hustle, once this side hustle starts matching my current pay, then I'll leave. Well, a lot of cases, that's nearly impossible. And so I call it a crack check, where you get addicted to that paycheck from your day gig. And it's nearly impossible to walk away from that. and that's okay, right? I'm not poo-pooing that. I often have regrets and saying I should have stayed and not done this, depending on the day, right? But at the same time, I think I would have regretted not trying to do this and to see where it went. And the only way to do that is to jump in with both feet.
Yeah. I've always called what you did, and I did something similar coming out of my engineering career, is an entrepreneurial seizure.
Yes, yes,
Because you don't, it doesn't, there's not just one day, well, I'm making twice as much money on my
yes,
side hustle as I am on my day job. That just doesn't happen.
that's right.
And there's just something that just goes, I got to do this, right?
Yeah. Well, in
And
some cases that
regret.
does happen, and
Yeah.
it's very frustrating at some level. It's like, well, I'm not good enough, and there's all this self-esteem issues that come out that it brings out every insecurity that you have because you're all by yourself. And so you do see those cases where people, and media is the worst for that. It's like, look at this guy. He makes $1 million, a year now, and it was just a side hustle. He spends 2 hours a week. I'm missing something. I did something wrong. And it goes all over the place, right? And this industry being manufacturing, the music industry, I mean, those are two strikes against you in terms of being a Silicon Valley startup, right? Nobody manufactures in the US and nobody does not software. It's like, well, there's no software sales here. And so that's really frustrating. So yes, you have a seizure, you're like, what the hell? Let me just go do it. And you almost have to do it, right? In order to see if it's going to work.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the early challenges you had to overcome?
Early challenges. Well, the biggest challenge is this right here, because
Mhm.
I wanted to do everything. And that's fine, but you can't expect to do a lot of everything if you are doing everything. And I think
Mhm.
I think it was valuable because then you got absolute firsthand experience on everything, and so you know what it takes. And that's good and bad. I think I have a couple of friends who don't know how to do everything, and they have much more successful businesses because they were forced to outsource to scale almost by default from the beginning. So I can see benefits to both ways, but that's my daily battle is to take all these things that I can do, mediocre at best, but I can do it, and then letting that go, spending the money, and trusting such that other things can go. So early on, you know, didn't get a full accounting package because I can do that myself on a spreadsheet. You didn't buy the top of the line machines because I can make machines that are good enough, and everything was fine. It was good enough, but today we have a CPA, we have attorneys, we have A-level machines, all the things that maybe we should have done at the beginning, but may not have been willing, we may not have been willing to take the risk.
So given that, and I call that being a recovering engineer. Um,
Yes.
I left the engineering world completely, so I'm farther along in my recovery. You stayed in the mechanical world, but
Yes.
so you added team members. So as you built your team, so how did you build your team then? And how did you learn to let go of things and trust them? And what was that?
Mhm.
What was that like?
Yeah, I'm not very far along on that. I think it's it's more of just day-to-day survival the demand has been there, and I have let that demand come in. And at the end of the day, you have no choice but to let go of something. And so part of the whole manufacturing side is if the spindle is not turning, you're losing money. So how do
Mhm.
you keep that spindle turning? Well, one is just pure automation, right? Automation costs money. Automation is complex. None of that makes any business sense on day one. And
Mhm.
so ultimately, you bring in humans that have two eyes and two hands that are remarkably intelligent and functional compared to the best automation that's out there. Oh, and by the way, they see things, they have ideas, they can feedback and things that can improve. And suddenly you get, I mean, just an incredible value out of the people. And it's not to say that it's an extractive employee-employer relationship. The point is you're bringing in partners, these people that can bring more ideas to the table. They can bring insight to things that you may have gotten used to, and just flows right through you now. It's just more active eyes and ears that make it work. And the goal, of course, is 1 + 1 is 3. And so each time you add somebody, it should be much more leverage so that the organization as a whole can do more. We still do invest in automation, but at the end of the day, you need people and you need trustworthy people. Everybody that's here is a friend of a friend, all coming from musical backgrounds, so they understand, they get what we're doing. It means something to them, and I think that goes a long way too. And that you're bringing in solid people who have a soul, who care and who want to do a good job, not because you're paying them, not because you have your thumb on them, but they're just inherently motivated. That character is indispensable.
Yeah. So how do you build that sense of team and culture that results in people walking in and smelling it, feeling it, sensing it? Because that's, I heard you describe it. So how do you create the team environment and culture that delivers that?
Yeah, it's excruciatingly hard, and I've been excruciatingly lucky in being able to build that. I'm a broken record when it comes to staff meetings every other week. Thankfully we have free coffee here so that it convinces everybody to come to staff meeting. But I'm a broken record on in preaching about it's not what we do, it's how we do it, and it's why we do it. Anybody can build a trumpet, right? You can source a trumpet out of China for $50 and write your name on it and be a competitor tomorrow. And there are people that do that. But at the end of the day, Blackburn Trumpets has been around 40 plus years, and Pickett now has been around 20 years. That longevity is not just dumb luck, and it's not being funded by some trust fund either. It makes money, but it's because it's a legacy that I want to continue, and I believe at the core that it's not about me, it's not about any one person, it's about the spirit and the soul that we build into every part. These brass instrument mouthpieces are just machine pieces of metal. And at the end of the day, when little Johnny has saved his money, just like I did when I was in middle school, saved his $50, $100, he bought that one mouthpiece, and you open that thing out of the box, and I am convinced that little Johnny can feel whether or not somebody cared or didn't care when they made that. And we get testimonials, and maybe they're anecdotal, but people are really excited because they have anticipated this part. We took care, and when we made it, it had their name on it all the way through the process. Everybody knows why they're making every part. Little Johnny's not there with you, but it's as close as you can get. And I think that soul and remembering that our life revolves around the people that we serve, and that we're not just making widgets, we're making them very efficiently, very skillfully, and very well. And all those things wrapped together, I think turns it into not just an assembly line job, but more of an artisan production.
Okay, awesome. So let's talk a little bit about business. So are you a goal setter?
Bigger, better, faster. Oh, wait, that's the trumpet player. It's higher, faster, louder. always have those goals. So can you share kind of, what's your, where do you see yourself? Where do you want to be 3 to 5 years from now? What, do you have, have growth plans? Yeah, goal setting is very good. Otherwise, and I know this certainly myself, is that you just wander around, chasing after the little shiny object, and that's fine. But don't complain to me later that you didn't get to where you were going because you never decided that you're going there. So the business here has basically two, maybe three realistic goals, or three really solid goals. The first is just brutal revenue growth, right? And that is not to grow and burn down the world or anything, but we need to get to a size that is self-sustaining, and ultimately the second goal is higher margin. So as revenue gets to a point, you're more cost effective, your margin goes up, and then everything is a much more stable and thicker organization. We did go through, I guess, probably the first 10 years, even like probably 10 or 15 years on not quite the Silicon Valley burn rate, but you had to put everything back in order to get to somewhere, right? You had to not take a paycheck. You had to invest such that you can afford the person to help you scale, all those stepping stones that you have to go through. So the first two goals are revenue growth to continue to get to a certain point that I don't know what it is, but we're still growing. And then the margin is improving, which is good because then we actually have money at the bottom line in order to invest to get things more stable. Ultimately, it's succession planning that I think this industry is lacking, at least at our scale. I want to get to a point where the business is sustainable. It does not need me. And again, it's not for my sake. It's just for the organization's sake, such that if I get hit by a bus, everybody doesn't go home. That is a crappy feeling, right? You get on an airplane, you go, if this airplane goes down, oh man, that's going to be a problem. And I don't want that. And I see that too often in companies smaller than us, and a founder that comes along, brilliant, great craftsman, does amazing things, has a stroke. Well, that's the end of that. Certainly in that flavor. Vincent Bach was very intelligent and sold the con in the days, right? Reynolds Schilke was able to sell. Binge was able to sell. Some of these previous generation companies, they did actually do some good succession planning, and as a result, you have those products today. Part of my interest in Cliff Blackburn's company is that Blackburn Trumpets deserved to live on. Right. And I think that was a service to the industry in order to carry on that legacy and to make it such that it will go past us as well.
Okay. So kind of, you've got 10 employees. So who are the leaders in your team, or how are you developing leaders in your team so that you can someday not just be just doing and do owner stuff?
Right. Hey, that's a good question. So when I was at Lexmark, I was also a manager, and I had my share of IBM and Lexmark manager training. And one of the challenges, I'm sure you know this from the engineering community, is that they will take a successful engineer and promote them into management, and then you get an unsuccessful manager. And it was a challenge. It was the same kind of calling my bluff. Here was this opportunity. I would regret not trying to do it, not thinking that I was going to be God's gift to management, but I should try it. And, thankfully it was, a very forgiving environment, and I knew the technical side of things. And so I didn't have to so much worry about that. It was the people management. And at that level, it was a lot of very highly skilled people and very intelligent people and very intimidating. And so it quickly, put me in my place, and that, let's learn how to deal with very powerful and skilled and intelligent people. And that respect goes a long way. And so coming here, then we didn't have any structure. It was very unstructured work environment, and for lack of a better term, hierarchy. And part of that was because I didn't know any better, and everything was running. Just do what you need to do, and let's live to see another day. And that works with a very small segment of people, and for not very long, and in an organization of a certain size. So we did institute a management structure, which, when I talk about it, I feel really silly in that we have 3 managers. So they cover the mouthpiece production, instrument production, and customer experience. And, the departments are like 2 and 3 people. And so on a superfluous level, it looks like you're turning into corporate America before you even get very big. On the flip side, it's been a good exercise for how to delegate and to let the managers do their job. Yes, they're all in production per se, but they have administrative duties. They have people duties, and business planning duties. And, it's a very immature organization in that the delegation's not super clear, and there are lots of loose ends, but there's some structure. And so that's something that we can build into and enjoy the liquidity of it, the elasticity of it. And it gives us a chance then when you hire somebody, now there's a little bit more structure to come into, as opposed to, well, here's another person in this room full of kids. And it's like, it's just everybody's running around with their head cut off. We don't have that. So that's helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we've covered a lot of tips there, a lot of honesty. And that's what I love about working with entrepreneurs. The honesty and none of this comes easy, right? And
No.
from the outside, it might look like it, but on the inside,
Mhm.
none of this comes easy. None of this is, no one's a natural business owner, right? You're natural born business owners, right? It's a process of learning and stuff. So really, so for our viewers, make sure you watch this a couple times. There's a lot of little things in there that Peter shared with us. So Peter, got last few questions here for you, just
Mhm.
real quick. What is your key to success?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's certainly in the beginning, it was just the complete irrational unconscious drive. I think that is the number one, um, just innate bad habit in a lot of cases, but in this case, it served me well. Unconscious in that you just did what you needed to do. Irrational because it didn't make any sense. Why are you spending so long on this? And it's drive. Again, it's slow, right? Nobody's going to burn down the world in this industry in 2 years, 5 years. So unconscious, irrational drive, and coupled with optimism. Otherwise, I don't think you could get up in the morning and think, "Oh my God, what in the hell am I doing?" So it has to be those three things: very optimistic, irrational, unconscious, and driven.
Okay, awesome. So what's one piece of advice you'd give other business owners?
Ooh, one piece of advice. Uh, that there is no one answer to any problem or way of doing things. How many business books have you read that say you should do this, or think like this, or I think stories and biographies and business fables, all the business self-help books, they're very interesting, and there's a tidbit of knowledge in every one of those. But your story is unique, and when I do talk about where I came from and what I did, it again, it makes all perfect sense. It looks like a fairy tale, and I have people say, "Well, I'm going to get my mechanical engineering degree, and then I'm going to finish playing, and I'm going to do what you do." Whoa, whoa, whoa. I mean, I wouldn't suggest that. I think you have to follow your own path. Don't lose track of the dream. It's not that you don't want to do this, but you're going to get there in a different place. And it took me a long time to figure that out. And I think part of the unconscious, irrational side forced that along to me, in that here we are. And I have to remember that going forward and not to try to go down a trodden path that's already there. So everybody's story is unique, and you'll get there your own way, but don't lose track of all the little tidbits along the way because they will help at some point.
Okay, awesome. So talked about reading books. So the next question is about books. So is there a book or whether you've read or listened to that you would recommend that other business people, other entrepreneurs read for that
Yeah,
really
yeah. So you caught me off guard there. So I'm thinking, and I'm drawing a complete blank. Predictable Success is probably the most recent one that I read that was the most non-hypey business book. It's a business consultant, and I honestly I can't remember his name right now. But just looking back, not so much in cause and correlation, overfitting, much like Good to Great, which I think is guilty of a little bit of overfitting and taking things out of context. The Predictable Success generalizes much more about small businesses and their stages of growth. And it's much more relatable to me than talking about Nucor Steel. Right, here are companies that have gone through startups and it's complete chaos, and all you're trying to do is live through the day. Oh, I've been there, right? Or other times where it feels like we don't know what we're doing. I've been there, right? Yeah. So Predictable Success seems to be one of my more recent ones that seems to hit home and more relatable, both to where I am as well as like where Lexmark and these multi-billion-dollar corporations are. You can kind of see now the relation, and then you can also choose a little more consciously where you want to be. So I think that one is one of my favorites here recently.
All right, awesome. Thanks. So second and last question. So if you had one area of your business that you can improve tomorrow, what would that be?
Oh, one area of business. So, one of our challenges used to be just the finance side on record keeping, and it's something that's so easy to let go. And I finally got with it 5 or 10 years ago. I was like, you have to have an accounting system. So at least that side, accounts payable, receivable, payroll, don't do those things because that's a waste of your time. Now it's turned into marketing, and CRM systems. Again, it gets to a certain point where your spreadsheet's not going to do it, and that is difficult because we didn't know what we needed 3 or 4 years ago. And so we bought into MailChimp, we bought into Constant Contact, HubSpot, Salesforce, you name it. And we just had a talk this morning about, oh, this is what we actually need, and this makes sense. I think spending more time on tools, honestly, in the beginning, even though they seem like overkill, I think that is something that is that helps you scale. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, and you get these tools that can do those things that you can do that will ultimately help you grow and let you focus on the things that either you're better at or that the business would benefit more.
Okay. All right, awesome. So people that want to learn more about your products and your processes and your team, where do they go to find out more?
So yeah, go to our website. It's Pickett Blackburn, Pickett Blackburn.com. So Pickett Brass and Blackburn Trumpets. We have obviously lots of social media presence on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn and TikTok. List goes on, doesn't it? Yeah, so lots of good press out there, lots of good pictures. Again, it's a very visual business. We made the bugle for the Kentucky Derby this past May, so there was a lot of visual that came out of that, which is super exciting. You can't buy that kind of press, and so look up the Kentucky Derby, and then of course come to trade shows. So our trade show season starts in December at the Midwest Clinic in Chicago at the McCormick Center, and then we go to a bunch of Music Education Association shows. And again, it's just a chance to meet and greet and to get stuff on your face and chat about stuff.
Awesome. All right, great. So my last question for you today, what inspires you the most right now?
What inspires me the most? I think that something that rejuvenates me every day, even though each day I come in, I'm nauseous, about an hour goes by and I'm okay. And that's every day. It's a putrid feeling, and it makes you want to quit before you even start. But I know that once I get through that, I'm okay. It's seeing stuff and seeing people creating these amazing things. And that seems kind of trivial because you see something, it's neither here nor there. We, organization, whether it's people, automation, software company, whatever, made this. It's very tactile. And everybody goes home with dirty hands, and they did something today. That makes me feel good. And I think that makes a lot of people feel good. We do tours for elementary, middle, and high school. And you see people kind of, light comes on when they say, oh, so you did this, right? And I think that's missing. And so that helps me in the morning, seeing shiny things and seeing people loving what they're doing. And then the day goes on, and then I can do stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, listeners, viewers, this has been Peter Pickett with Pickett Brass and Blackburn Trumpets. Peter, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. This has really been interesting and enlightening. And I love hearing from a fellow former engineer.
Yes, recovering engineer, as you would say.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right. So viewers, this has been Coach Mark with Action Coach, Peter Pickett with Pickett Brass, Blackburn Trumpets. Bookmark this, watch it a couple times, and we will see you on the next interview. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.